Welcome to the Horror Friendly Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Horror Friendly Podcast, part of the aaand Podcast Network. My name is Katie, and I am joined by Chantal. Hi, Chantal.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm good. Are you ready for this one?
I'm ready. Yeah, I'm definitely ready. I've got my notes. I'm good to go.
We'll both say we've got notes on phones today, so we look very professional, our highest level of professional as usual.
As usual.
I feel like we just need to dig into this one because
let's just get straight into it.
We were already starting to have a chat. I was like, we need to start recording because we're going to miss everything good. Okay, so this week we are covering the 1977 horror classic, The Hills Have Eyes. On the way to California, a family has the misfortune to have their car break down in an area closed to the public and inhabited by violent savages ready to attack. Katie, first time watching this?
I don't think so, which sounds insane. But I went on my Letterboxd and I'd already reviewed it. So I'm 99% sure that I have watched this. But it was a long, long time ago. Like I remember watching the remake, more than I remember watching the original. So I kind of see it as my first time because I don't really remember it. But so we'll say yes. What about you? Is it your first time?
See, this is similar, where again it sounds mad that we don't know. But either I watched it a very long time ago, which is concerning, but everything I remembered, I think, was the remake. And I remember watching the remake with you because we were eating Chinese and we had to stop because there was meat in our food. And what was on it was the only film I've ever watched with you where we had to put the food down. And we were like, I actually can't eat my dinner right now. And that was definitely not this one. So, I'm going to say it was first time because it definitely didn't jog anything in my memory.
No.
Yeah. What were your first impressions then?
I mean, I really, really enjoyed this film. I just thought I thought it kind of had everything in it, really. Like the violence was there and the kind of the violence and the gore was really good, I felt. And then you could see a lot of inspiration as well. Like apparently Wes Craven was very inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Came out a few years before this. And you could kind of really see that inspiration in there. And I just thought it was like genuinely creepy, genuinely scary, kind of depraved in some parts, and like just a good slasher film. Yeah, what about you?
I know everything you're saying about it. Yeah, it is so depraved. But I think, again, we say this a lot with older horrors, is they are a victim of their own time. So rewatching it is good, but there were moments where I was like, I'm not enjoying this. But if it was made nowadays, they wouldn't have done that. So it's like when you look at a piece of art that someone drew 2 years ago and you're like, oh, you've come so far. And I feel like it was that because this was only the second horror that Wes Craven had done. And I didn't know that he didn't want to do this. He didn't want to do more horror after his first, after the
Last House on the Left.
Thank you. I was like, House on the Left, but I'm missing a word. Last House on the Left. He didn't want to do more horror, which is so funny now that he's like only known for horror. He's the granddad of horror. So I think there are moments where I'm like, that feels very 70s, very dated, but it works in the film. It's just when you're watching it with a modern lens, you're like, why are you doing that?
Like what?
So for example, and I've already I've pulled up the cast name, but I'm going to get them all wrong because they've all aged, bless them. So is it Brenda?
Yeah, Brenda's the one at the end. Yeah.
So don't get me wrong. I know she has a really horrific scene. And then when her family come, but then she just screams outside the caravan for like 5 minutes straight. And I feel that's a very 70s thing. And I think we have said about some early horrors before, where back then, the only reaction they knew for fear acting was to scream. So they scream for fucking ages, even though in reality, like we've all been in a situation where you've wanted to scream, but it tends to be like one or two big screams for like a minute, 2 minutes max. And there's a lot more. Like she did actually do it when she was kind of sat, just silent.
Yeah.
And I was like, that did actually show like a different way of like processing what she'd just been through. But I think things like that, where that scene, she just became this like, oh, I'm this helpless damsel in distress, and all I can do is scream and I'm useless. And I was just like, that feels very dated. That feels very, at the time, how acting was very over the top, very didn't have any other way to show that emotion, which was funny because then a scene or two later, she did show it in a different way. But I was just like, stop screaming. And then she does it again later. And I'm like, because they didn't know better. Like you watch films now and you're like, oh my God, that person is like so scared and processing this trauma, but in a very different way and in a way that feels a bit more real. But sorry, I'm now rambling and scrutinizing, but it's what we do.
It's what we do. It's a review. Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I kind of took it like, I do agree with you, like with Texas Chainsaw, I think you're referring to, when Sally was just like screaming a lot. Like I didn't mind that because I fucking love that film, but like I get it with this, like yeah, there were times where it was a lot. And like you say, I think maybe that was more of like of its time sort of thing. But at the same time, like as you say, she'd gone through some horrendous trauma. So maybe she is just kind of uncontrollably screaming. But I do know what you mean, because some points she would do that and then stop and then do it again. And it's like, well, why didn't you just do it all in one? Like
one big.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And obviously she's still processing it throughout like the like half of the film, but like the screaming could kind of go like after, like initially, like after it's happened kind of thing.
And I think that was part of my problem, was like while she was screaming and like clinging on to the guy, the bad guy, who I'm gonna get all their bloody names wrong, Mars, was like still in shot. And I was like yes, you're still processing, but you're still also trying to survive, and he's still in view. Like you're like, unfortunately, you're gonna have to process later. Like, and that's so insensitive to what she's just been through. But it's also, like you say, it feels very dated, where it's this, there's no like logical survival, where there's none of that, like we have to get out of this situation first, so then I'm gonna go find a cliff and scream into the abyss. Like and I think that's the really it's hard, because it's like I get it, but I also get it in a different way. And you can't tell someone how to react, but I feel like in the 70s and earlier horrors, that's what they thought everyone would react like. And actually a lot of people do go into shock and they do go silent because they're shutting down. So I don't know, it was one that really stood out as very dated to me. No,
that's fair. I do like the way it was kind of done, where it's sort of like very much built up before all this insane stuff starts happening. Like I like how you kind of get to know the family a bit and the family dynamic. And I found that with the remake as well. Like you do kind of have a lot of time to kind of get to know them as a family, which I think is what makes it more like horrific when the attack actually happens, because it's like, oh fuck, this is just started to kick off now.
And it's like mom, dad, grandparents, baby. Like the funny thing was, I was literally, just as I started to be like, oh my God, I forgot how slow it was to start. Just as I had that thought is when the dog ran off and it all kicked off. So I was like, actually, they kind of timed it perfectly, where just as you were like, don't, like, I get it, they're a happy family. Actually, now the next bit starts. I was like, thank you. Right. So although as soon as you saw the dogs, did you not know they were going to die?
Yeah, I mean, one of the dogs doesn't.
I know. I was actually really surprised by that, because I don't want dogs to die, but it is normally the formula.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Beast that survives.
Yeah. Beast makes attack at the end.
Also, but one side plot with the dogs, like when that family just sit and casually laugh about how they killed, one of the dogs killed a poodle. Like, did you pick up on that?
Remember that poodle he killed in Miami?
Do I?
Oh boy, was that lady ever fit to be tied.
Was Daddy ever mad? He had to pay vet bills for a dead poodle.
It's like, that's not funny, guys.
And Dad got annoyed because he had to pay vet bills for a dead poodle, and I'm like, But if a dog had killed your dog, you'd be fucking fuming. Like,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a campfire story.
Yeah, it's like a fucking dead dog, man. Like, that's why are you laughing?
It's more. Oh, yeah, that was bad. Like, we actually had a dog growing up that ran off from my sister, and she thought it was just like in the bush, and it did come back with another dog in its mouth. Like, it just picked it up like a puppy, and the owner was horrified, and my sister was horrified, and that was it. Like, it's not one of those, and the dog was fine, but it was one of those where it was like, if the dog hadn't been fine, like, that wouldn't be a fun, cute story we tell. It would be like, hey, remember when our dog slaughtered another animal? Like,
yeah, good times.
And our dog had never done anything like that. He'd never shown any signs of aggression or anything. And then all of a sudden just came. But I think that was it. It picked it up like a puppy, like, I have a friend. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Not how we make friends, though.
But it was like at the beginning, they stop at, obviously they're in Nevada, they stop at Fred's oasis for fuel. So Fred, and then he's confronted by the dogs, and then instantly you're like, oh my God, these dogs are terrifying.
They're cute.
They're cute, but like they would rip you apart.
Well, and again, like later on, that's kind of amazing that actually they're that, defensive of their family, of their pack, which is incredible.
True. Yeah, I mean, Beast like fucks a lot of people up in this, so
yeah,
fair enough. But I did quite like the Fred stop at the beginning. I think that's very like classic slasher, isn't it? Where you've got like the guy that's, the old guy that he didn't warn because obviously it's kind of indicated that he's part of that family, like, not wanting to be.
Kind of his fault.
And he's kind of saying like, stay on the road, stay safe. So it is kind of a different situation, but it's kind of similar to Texas Chainsaw in that they've got that guy that's secretly related to them, and at the end it all comes together. So again, like a lot of Texas Chainsaw influence there. But I kind of liked that. I thought it gave the other family a bit more of a backstory. I think that like, Pluto, Jupiter and Mars, like it gave them a little bit more of a backstory, which I think was needed because I think it needed to be explained.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just like, well, where have these people come from? Like,
who are they?
People come from somewhere. Like, just magically appear one day in the hills. So I think that was cool actually to kind of like hear and be like, oh, there's a reason he's a piece of shit. Like, well, he sounded like a piece of shit before his dad kicked him out, but still. Yeah. Yeah, and I also thought it was interesting, like Ruby's character, where she was kind of like with them, but from the sound of it, like I couldn't figure out if she'd run away and joined them or if she ran away from them.
No, like, I think it was that she was part of the family. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, because they called her a runaway, and I was like, did she run away from who? Like, yeah, I was like, from which? But then she was at Fred's as well.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, so I think maybe it's like maybe Fred's like keeping a kind of an eye on them the entire time. Like he might not be fully in that family, but he's kind of observing them, because I suppose he would be observing them if he was like also living around Nevada as well. But
so it's not the hills of eyes, it's Fred has eyes on the hills.
Basically.
That's why he's never left. He's like, shit, I've got all these people.
But just very quickly talking about that family, actually. Apparently Wes Craven took inspiration from Roman mythology when he was naming the bad guys.
Hence the planets, yeah.
Hence the planets, yeah. So naming the bad guys different planets. But apparently Rubo? Who's Rubo?
Rubo! It's like RoboCop, but
yeah, Rubocop.
Solar powered in the desert.
I'm tired. Ruby didn't follow the same narrative because apparently Wes Craven said that she was like the gem of the family.
Oh, that's very cute.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was the same with you, but like when I was introduced to Ruby, like right at the beginning, I started to then remember a bit more of the remake with how like Ruby's portrayed. I don't know if that was the same for you, but
a little bit, but not. I actually, to be fair, I was wondering if I had time to fit the remake in as well before we recorded, because I was like, damn, like. But it's probably best to do one at a time to get all the information in there. But yeah, no, this is it. I feel like the remake is a lot, like follows a lot of the same. So as you say, like it does tweak, which is why again you're like, crap, have I seen this? Have I not?
Yeah.
But no. I also kind of liked her look, but it didn't feel very like hillbilly. It felt almost like gothic.
Yeah, I guess maybe, I mean, yeah, she did have a different look to her.
Mm.
Again, I guess it was like emphasized that she is kind of like the black sheep of the family, and she isn't, involved in
I
this.
say, how do you become the black sheep of the like hillbilly in the
Well,
like
she
they're not
is.
even hillbillies. What are they? Like
No, they're not hillbillies. They're
I don't
like
know what to
kind of
call them.
like,
Like
well,
hill
I know.
dwellers.
Yeah, well, in the remake, it's like implied that there was like a nuclear explosion or something, and then a lot of
Yeah.
them turned sort of like I'm trying to find the right word
Mutant.
for it. Yeah.
That's the word I'm gonna.
Um yeah, like yes. So
Which is interesting because obviously in this one you have Michael Berryman, who has a condition which I don't want to try and pronounce because, as many things in medical terms, it is not easy, but it's hypio no hypohidrotic ectodermal dysplasia. This is why I'm not a doctor, but it was because his dad was in Chernobyl and was exposed to radiation. So he was then born with a birth defect, which
right.
causes his quite unique look. But apparently, because he's such a fucking lovely guy, is what they say is why he's had such a great career. Is because everyone's like, yeah, keep coming back into like horror films and that. Which was funny because when you look at a picture of him now versus then, he doesn't look like he's aged massively.
No, he
And I was
doesn't.
just like, this guy's got like, he's not aging. That's working for him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wonder if that was kind of why they were like, oh, we'll blame it on radiation, like in the remake. If that was a coincidence or a nod to, or just an excuse for. I think people do that sometimes, don't they? They're like, oh yeah, radiation. And like, you can't blame everything on it.
Yeah, no, I think he was one of the highlights of the film for me. Like, I think he was a fantastic actor, and also just like I think just obviously like got himself really stuck into the role. I felt like I think he was one of my favorites.
I was like, it's funny because he's on the cover.
Yeah.
So I remembered him as like the bad guy, not as like, was he the son? Was he
Yes,
his son? Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the kids. Yeah.
So to me, he was like top dog, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, he's not. He's being bossed around.
I guess at that time it was probably because of his look. That's probably why he was on the front of the cover, maybe. Also, I guess he's a pretty prominent character, and when you think of Hills of Ice, you do think of like him as well. Like you think of his character. So so I think me and you were the same. Like as soon as we saw the cover, we were like, we've definitely fucking seen this.
Definitely seen this film, and then it's like, have I seen this fucking film?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really weird one actually, because that's what's weird. Like I distinctly remember sitting with you and watching the remake. I have watched the second one as well, but I remember watching this but I just don't. I remember tiny bits of the original one, but hardly anything. Yeah, so it's weird. Really weird. I also got a bit of influence, like when they were. It was also quite funny when they were fucking with them on the walkie-talkie. Yeah, and were saying like that was casually low-key funny. But when they were doing the heavy breathing, that really reminded me of Black Christmas, like on the phones. Yeah.
It is funny, isn't it? How like films nowadays will be like, oh, it's influenced by The Hills of Ice, and then you watch The Hills of Ice, and you're like,
I know,
fuck, there's so much influence in this, or
there's like, so many layers,
or that you can see in future films. You're like, this is so like mad.
Yes.
But it was good. I loved, I did make a note, and again, it feels very 70s. Like some of the SFX in this is actually pretty good. It was when they did the close-up and his skin was kind of moving separate, which because the gash was so big, and I couldn't figure out. I was like, I mean, I guess it would do that because I suppose if you've got a gash, like if it was separate from the muscle, anyway. So I was fascinated with that bit. But then there was the bits where like somebody got stabbed or shot, and the blood was so red. And then there was like a hand, like a perfect handprint, like a perfect bloody hand. It was quite near the beginning. And it was just, I was like, that's so paint. Like, and it's so hard because you're like, again, 70, so you forgive it. But you're like, it was so red and it was so perfect. It wasn't like missing a part or anything. It wasn't like dried blood. And it cracked me up because I was like, that's very clearly not blood.
I thought Michael Berryman's character, Pluto. Yeah, of course. Sorry, Pluto. When he has that when Beast makes that like gash on his foot, I thought that looked pretty violent. That was quite effective.
On his Achilles.
Yeah.
It was really sticking out, and I was like, oh, they've made that like it's fucked. Like it's unfixable. Yeah, that whole scene was just like, oh my god, there's so much happening. But yeah, that was pretty fucking brutal.
Yeah, it was. Talking of brutal, obviously that scene in the middle when it all kicks off. What did you kind of make of like, so there was the dad on fire, and then obviously the two of them came into the trailer. Like lots of things were happening at once, but I thought like sequence wise it was done really well because you kind of got to see everything that was going on. Like it wasn't like, oh, what's this guy up to? What's this happening? Like
Yeah,
I
you're
felt
right.
like it was done well.
Yeah, you're right. It wasn't like some films now where they bounce around and they're like, remember these 6 things all happening at once. So it's like you knew it was happening at once or in a sequence. But that is like it's a hard watch. Like that bit is brutal. You are watching a rape scene. You are eating. You are watching a guy eat a budgie out of a cage. You're watching the dad on fire. Watching like the mum get killed, and then they're eyeing up the baby, and it is like you say, it's one horrible thing after another, and it's not one of those like one. Well, I know what I think is worse than the others, but it's not one of those where you are like, oh well, that's the most horrific thing because it just keeps coming. Yeah, and you're like, oh fuck. Even when the mum, like the oldest mum, died, but it was like she got shot and then it took her all night, and I was like, this is brutal. It just doesn't stop. Yeah, and then when she was like slowly dying and she was asking for blankets and stuff, like, and then I really liked her reaction actually when she like saw her husband. She was just like, that's not him, and kind of went into like a hysteria. I thought that was really effective, which I think fair, because I think as well, after everything that's happened, she just can't comprehend why would this happen to us. We prayed to God, why would this happen to us? And I don't think she's comprehending she's dying. But even when she's been shot, she's asking her son, where are all the kids back? Like, she's such a mum, she's immediately asking after her kids. And like her daughter's sat there in shock, and the brother's like, oh yeah, she's here, she'll look up, like she'll hold your hand. And it's like this poor kid who's just been through trauma. I say kid, adult lady, but like fucking fuck that. Fuck having to be an adult in that situation. Like,
I'm pretty sure that guy was
I'm getting all their names wrong, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think it was Doug. I think Doug was the one. I think he was the husband.
Yes, actually, so, you're right.
Yeah, it was like, Doug, Bobby, Brenda. I think they were the ones. They were the survivors.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I found it pretty mad that Lynn died pretty quickly. Like the mum of the baby. Like that was very. I remembered that she died from the remake, but I remember it was very sudden.
Yeah.
Like it was just like being shot in front of your baby. Like it was just fucking horrific.
Yeah, I thought it was more than a shooting because I actually didn't remember any guns. I've got to rewatch the remake and be like, what was I thinking? But you just don't think, when you think Hills of Eyes, my brain automatically goes to like in the middle of nowhere, so weapons. You're not going to have ammo, so you go for like hand weapons, which I did actually love when Ruby ended up using the snake at the end. Because I was like, great, because you know she wouldn't, unless she can get the one gun that seems to be passed around. I just thought that was really clever. But so when you're like, oh well, she died from a gunshot wound, and you're like, wait, in my head I was like, that doesn't add up. Like surely it was stabbing, but there was a gun.
I mean, this was and Dee Wallace played her, and she's quite a famous actor. She's pretty well known. She was in like E.T. She's known as a Scream Queen, so she's been in Cujo, The Howling, Halloween, House of the Devil, Lords of Salem. So she's been in a lot. So like this was kind of like the start of her horror career, which I thought is always quite fun when you see like a early person that's turned into this horror legend. But yeah, so no, I didn't expect her to die so quickly, but that was fucking savage. I mean, that beginning bit is, well, not beginning bit, but like halfway through, it's just intense as fuck. But it's good and it's effective, but it's just a lot.
I think as well, when you sort of talk about this film, I think everyone, that's the bit they remember.
Yeah.
Like, nobody really focuses on the bit at the beginning. No one really thinks about the ending. Everyone's like, that fucking scene is what stays with you.
Yeah, it's so true.
Like, you want a conclusion, but that fucking is what keeps you up at night.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny that you say with the snake, because I think that was actually like a poisonous snake. They didn't milk it, like nothing. They just like, I think, because I guess like it was on a really, really small budget. It was made in the 70s. It was very much like just make do, guys.
They had like no permits or anything either, so they were just like there fucking shit up, and I was like, oh my god, what is happening? Absolutely, that was not a safe snake.
No, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, they wouldn't have had any permits or anything.
I was just there like, please tell me this isn't another Friday the 13th situation with the snake.
Oh god, it literally made me think that as well. I was like, wait, is this going to be a thing? No, it's not.
No, it was all good as far as we know.
Well, kind of talking of the behind the scenes aspect, apparently it was like fucking crazy. Like the hours were insanely long, and it was like crazy hot weather. I think at some points it would go up to like 49 degrees Celsius. And obviously, and obviously some of them would be like running, like most of them would be. I
didn't think about that. Yeah, they're literally running in a desert.
Yeah. And one of Michael Berryman's defects is that he doesn't sweat. He has no sweat glands. So they really had to like look after him. And like apparently as soon as he did a physical scene, they would have to be like, get into the shade, have like a pint of water.
Yeah, cool him down, throw water on him.
Yeah, intense.
That is actually, I hadn't even put those together. Yeah, that's a tough one actually when you don't sweat.
Yeah, it's fucking mad. I think the actors and the crew, like everyone was being paid like minimum wage, but I think it was very much kind of like they were doing it out of love. Maybe more the cast than the crew. Apparently the cast were a bit the crew were a bit skeptical about doing it. They weren't sure like how the film was going to come across, and apparently like after a couple of weeks of filming, like Wes Craven was like really enthusiastic about it, so it kind of made them more enthusiastic. So, and obviously like now I'm sure they're extremely proud of it, but yeah, it's different at the time.
That's it. I mean, you do, as you say, like you do look at that cast, and like, I mean, like, there's only a couple of them who I would say we kind of know now. Yeah, but this was probably a lot of their first films, or like, or they'd had like a smaller career, because, and especially in '77, like we didn't have movie stars weren't quite what they are now. No. So. Yeah,
they probably had like 2-3 jobs on the side and just thought, well, I'll do this for a few weeks. Yeah. See what happens.
Fancy a holiday in the desert. Sure, why not?
Sure, holiday. Yeah.
That's crazy. I did love as well, like, so after the snake bit, obviously when they're like, right, we need to catch him, we need to kill him. And they line up the dead mum to use her as like a trap sort of distraction. I was like, that is fucking savage. Like at this point, the good guys have now become as bad as the savages.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they were kind of reluctant to do it, I guess, in their defense. Like, I don't think Brenda was completely stoked about it, but
I'm not on board with this.
Oh god,
a bit reluctant to use your dead mum as a fucking target. Oh my god.
Well, I think they. I don't think they necessarily wanted to, but I think they kind of just thought, well, what are we supposed to fucking do?
Well, the other option was leave her in the caravan, which they were planning on blowing up.
Yeah,
it wasn't really a win-win, if I'm honest.
No, they didn't have. That's the thing. Like, that's the savage thing. They didn't have time to retrieve the bodies. Like, they just had to leave them there. But yeah, the poor mum.
Like, I say she cared about them, and they were like, "Oh, we're just going to use you as a decoy." I was like, "This is brutal."
Yeah, brutal. Savage.
But yeah, no, that was also their only caravan, so they had one take to blow it up.
Oh shit!
Which is really awkward if that had gone wrong. Obviously, it didn't. But like, if that had gone wrong, couldn't have done it again.
Yeah, that's extremely awkward. Like, oh fuck, what do we do now? What did you think of, with the dad, like the aftermath of him? I actually really liked that because it was horrific, but you could see like the smoke still coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. I thought it was so funny with the dad because when he like haha no, like, but right at the beginning when he was the car broke down, and then he was kind of like almost giving a lecture. It looked like it almost like he was just short of looking down the camera, where he was just like, I served all these years and I never had a problem. And because of like the set behind him as well, the setting, it looked like he was literally doing like a news presentation. I was like, what's happening? Like, so he was cracking me up. And then he was obviously like man with a plan. And then unfortunately didn't end that way. But I did think that was really effective, where it like showed him smoking and everything. So it was really hard because it was, as you said, you kind of learn a bit about these characters, and they, especially like the mum and dad / grandparents to the baby, like they wanted to look after their young ones and their next generation. So yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah. I felt like I did get that vibe a bit more in the remake, where they were like maybe a tiny bit more likable. Like the dad uses like a really intense racial slur when he's talking in this film. Yeah.
I completely missed that.
Yeah, he like talks about, he says
shit.
the N-word. Yeah,
I completely missed that.
Yeah, and then like he just like screams at his family in the car, and I'm kind of like, you know, you can. I'm not that bothered about you.
Yeah, he wasn't the most like. But again, I feel like that was a very 70s dad. Like no one
Absolutely
who was raised in the 70s has good words. They're like, my dad was a great man, but it's never a great father. Like they're always like strict disciplinarians.
Yeah, a great man for like serving in the war or whatever, but it, you know.
Yeah, he provided for his family. But it's never he was a really heartwarming, sensitive. No, he shouted at us and we listened.
Yeah.
Or it was the bell. Like that feels like very 70s parenting.
Yes.
Especially as these kids are grown up, so he'd have been a 60s dad as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, probably even earlier than that.
Yeah, depending on his kid's age. So it is one of those where you're like, yeah. Nowadays we're like, no, you can fuck off.
Yeah. Well, the dad in the remake is played by fucking Ted Levine, who is Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. So I'm always going to pick him over this racist guy.
I'm baffled I missed that. So very sorry, because that's really shit. Also not surprised though for a 70s film.
No,
Sadly.
it was, no, I mean, I don't know how much of that was on purpose in terms of like that you're meant to like not really like him, and but
Maybe.
it's hard to tell around that sort of time whether that was just something that was quote unquote acceptable to say. I don't know.
The way we spoke.
It's just so, that's just very alien to me and you, because like that's just so far removed from us that would be an acceptable thing to say. So yeah, don't know. That was a bit of a weird one, but
Jesus.
Yeah. But anyway.
The end of the day, what the fuck's with the people running around back and forth at the beginning? Like the dogs were barking and the guy was like, there's nothing there, and there's people just running back and forth, and I was like, the fuck is it's like something out of Scooby-Doo. I was like, it's too funny.
Oh yeah, I mean, we kind of have talked about it throughout the episode anyway, but just about the remake again, like we've kind of said that it's very sort of similar in terms of the plot. Like maybe it's a bit more emphasized about like the area and what happened to these people. But I know obviously we're not covering that, so I don't want to go too much into it. But what was I going to say about it? It's like you said, it's really made me want to rewatch the remake. So I think with horror film remakes, I think they can go one of two ways. I think a lot of them are terrible, and this one I think is kind of largely like, I think it had pretty positive reviews when it came out, which is kind of rare for a horror remake. But I remember really liking it. I'm pretty sure you liked it.
Other than physically not being able to eat, but that's the sign of a great horror.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a bad thing.
No, I think I did like it. And again, it's not that I think this one's bad at all. I just think when you look at it, you're like, it's definitely an older film.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, I seem to remember really enjoying it. And it's certainly one of like the better horror remakes I've seen.
Yeah.
I think it emphasizes the gore a lot more. I seem to remember it being like very gory. Obviously, the budget is so much more, so they were able to kind of like utilize SFX and do it really well. And I do also like that there's a bit more of a backstory and you meet other characters that have gone through this nuclear whatever it was. Need to do a bit more research on that, but yeah, I think the bigger budget helps. But if you guys haven't seen the remake,
It is worth it.
I think it's worth it. Yeah,
I
because
think it's so worth it. Yeah.
yeah, it's quite nice to do a little comparison, and also it's like it is one of the better remakes out there. So
Again, it is a hard watch because it does cover the same themes this one does. So it does make it really tough. And I think that's the thing. I think it's is more graphic. I remember the rape scene being way more upsetting.
yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And as you say, like they had a bigger budget so they could be more gory, but I think, sometimes that does make things really fucking hard to watch.
Yeah.
But I think because of that, I thought this one was gorier.
Mm.
Which it was, but I think as well when they zoomed in, they were like, look at this really cool detail, rather than just stabbing and slashing for the sake of it. Which we've seen in so many horrors. So I kind of liked that anything in this was like shoot to kill, stab to kill, like it was very deliberate injuries rather than just hacking and slashing and guts falling out for no apparent reason.
Yeah. For sure.
So as we were talking about the rape scene and being quite difficult, according to Susan Lanier, the tension was at first quite high when the crew prepared to shoot the scene where Pluto rapes Brenda. As a gag to break the ice for everyone, Lanier and Michael Berryman started making out during the first take. The whole crew laughed hysterically, which I haven't actually looked into a lot of like behind the scenes for rape scenes because I feel like they are quite tough mentally. So actually to know the actors were like, we've got to kind of help everyone loosen the mood. Like it's kind of nice that everyone was taking it so seriously, but then also nice that they were like, no one's going to walk away with scars. We're going to like try and make this enjoyable is the wrong word for that, but not scarring is probably the best you can hope for. So
yeah, that's kind of a nice story. I guess it's like it's a really difficult scene for both of them to do. So it's like, how can we like make this less shit?
But also apparently, so star Michael Berryman, it's all about him. He's our star. Said he was once watching the film in a theatre when a woman in front of him said aloud, "This movie is sick and depraved." Berryman then thought it would be funny to lean over to her and say, "You're damn right, lady. This movie is sick."
I love that.
Although my God, I said that's so aggressive. He'd have done it way creepier.
I would have loved to have seen that lady's reaction or known what she said back.
Yeah, like 4D come to life way early, just scream and run out.
Michael Berryman was ahead of his time.
Way ahead of his time. Just sat there laughing to himself. That's amazing.
That's great. Oh, apparently Wes Craven wanted to kill the baby off. They were like, yeah, let's eat the baby, let's do it. And then apparently like a lot of the cast and crew were just like, no, we're not going to do the film if that's going to be in there.
Eat the baby. That's so fucked up, but so funny.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I mean, Wes Craven, Last House on the Left is again like a rape, kind of essentially a rape revenge film. There's a lot of rape in there, and he does do a lot of there's a lot of depraved shit that goes into Wes Craven's films. So I think he maybe wanted to follow that theme, but yep, everyone was like, no, mate, we're not doing that.
I feel like he's like, if I'm going to do horror, I'm going to do it right.
Yeah, I feel like. I know. I feel like he is. Like I forgot. Like I think because like his whole not whole, but like a lot of his life towards the sort of second half of his life, a lot of it was based around Scream. So you forget that he was this like kind of, I don't want to say serious because obviously he was serious about the Scream films, but in like he made such different films to Scream.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, one you wouldn't laugh at, one you'd be laughing a lot at.
Yeah, like Nightmare on Elm Street, and then two of like those two which are like depraved as fuck, and then you've got Scream. Like he's got such a fucking CV.
But I think that's it. He did so many like depraved, really intense horror films that when it got to Scream, he was just taking the piss out of the genre. And I think he had so much fun with that. Like, but you'd kind of probably want to change after a while because you're like, well, I've done everything. I've done nightmares, I've done cannibalism, I've done everything, and then it's like, oh, what can I do? Take the piss. And I think that's perfect. But you have to almost have this background to be like, I can take don't have to, but I think it helps when you're like,
I think it does.
I can look at the really dark side and take the mickey out of it. Um,
Well, like you said, like it sort of felt like Scream was kind of his sort of time to lay back and kind of
yeah.
just it felt like, I mean, I remember when we covered the first Scream, it was like I think it really revitalized him as a director. He was like, cool, we're doing something different.
It was like a love letter to horror, but
Mm,
taking the piss out of it and looking back at it with that love and with that joy rather
yeah.
than look at this really horrible genre that people don't give a chance to.
Hmm. Yeah, so
Um,
true.
Although also, according to Wes Craven, the film was shot on cameras rented from a famous California pornographer.
Okay.
Because hey, if you're going to get the cameras cheap,
Yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah. I mean, God, he was doing everything on such a fucking shoestring.
such a fucking. When this one had a bigger budget than the House on the Left.
Last House.
Why can I not get that right? Last House on the Left. But again, still not big.
Hmm. Crazy.
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 So, oh my god, to avoid being banned because of the cannibal theme, the German dub refers to the mutants as aliens who hate all mankind. It makes sense as the characters are called Mars, Jupiter, and Pluto. But
Okay.
the VHS version was still banned in West Germany,
Oh, wow. Okay.
which is so funny when you're like, you always think of German as having quite heavy horror themes, and then they're like, no, we can't go to cannibalism.
Is that why? Is that why they wanted it banned?
Yeah. So they made them aliens instead. Although apparently the scene where they are actually eating, I'm going to call him Grandad because I forgot his name. It was a lamb leg or a leg of lamb.
Okay.
But apparently because the cast had been like working all day, they were so hungry they were just going for it.
They welcomed it. They're like, yeah, give it.
I'll rip it off the bone.
They probably weren't even acting.
No,
They were just like fucking hungry.
That was just their lunch break.
That's amazing.
Amazing. Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, do you think you would survive The Hills of Eyes, the original?
No, because I'm not sure I would put my mum's corpse as a, you know, whatever it was for a
Decoy.
thank you. Yeah, that kind of vibe. I'm not sure I would do that, so I think
No.
maybe one of them would just end up eating me. Yeah, I don't know if I'd find a way. I think that's what kind of makes this film scary, is I feel like there's not a lot of options or chances to escape. So I think for me, I'm not sure I would, you know. What about
Yeah.
you?
I don't think I would, and I think what's worse is this is the sort of scenario I'd end up in because I'm like my car is like
Oh God.
fucking old and currently broken. But I've been like, my car's it breaks every now and then. Even my car history is not great, but I'm the sort of twat that will just go, oh yeah, let's cut through the desert. That'll be an adventure.
You absolutely would do that.
And my car would break down because it would. Do you know what? Actually, my car has never failed me when I've really needed it. So
Yeah, I fucking love your car.
It's
Your
great.
car's been yeah.
But it's never failed me when I've really needed it. But it probably would break down because I've chosen to go on a stupid adventure through the desert. And
Yes.
I would then be stuck in that situation.
You would do that because you'd be like, yeah, scenic route, cute. Like take some
that's
pictures
cute.
for the podcast.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go this way, the road less traveled. And I would absolutely end up in that situation.
Yes. Yeah, I actually agree with you.
Yeah. And that's the problem, is like a lot of the times, because my car's only a 4-seater as well, and I don't tow a caravan, it would be me on my own or me with like one other person, and then you're really fucked because you haven't got 10 people to send on missions.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yes, unfortunately, I could see myself in this exact scenario. Knowing who I am as a person.
I'm calling me out.
I'm calling me out. I'm the problem.
I the drama.
I the drama always. But what are you going to give The Hills of Eyes out of 5? And what's your favourite spooky moment?
So I always fucking forget to think of a spooky moment. Okay. Well, I mean, there's a few in there. I'm gonna say spooky moment is when actually, I think when you first spot the dad on fire, I think that's pretty shocking if you're not expecting that and you've not seen that before. I think me and you were kind of expecting it because we remember it from the remake, but
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty shocking. And then, as I was saying earlier, like getting him down and kind of seeing the aftermath of his body, I think that was quite shocking.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to give it as 4 spookies. I really enjoyed it. I really kind of just love films like this. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of my favorite horror films, and I think there was so much inspiration from that. And I love Wes Craven, and I just think what he did with the film was great. I think the SFX and the gore was really good for its time, and I think the acting was decent. And yeah, like decent horror film. I enjoyed it, but I think maybe I probably liked it as much as the remake. So I'll say that. But yeah, 4 for me. What about you, wifey?
So my favorite moment, bollocks. I was trying to like run through my head. I think I'm gonna go with it's like towards the end when they capture Mars and they're like using the car wheel with the tires of it's the wheel and they're like pulling him in, because I think at that point you're like, oh, it gives you that sense of hope, and then it breaks and he's free again and you're like, oh fuck. So I kind of like that, because I think, and again, especially for like an earlier horror, it really knew how to get you to be like, oh, yay, hope. Oh shit. Oh yeah. Like it really kind of made you go up and down. So I give it that. I think I'm gonna go 3.5. Again, I think it's done a shit ton for horror. Wes Craven, absolute god. I think the acting was great, minus I think where I struggle is the very 70s like over the top reactions, which just feel a little bit distracting when you're like, stop screaming, I can't hear what's happening.
Look, Brandon, will you keep it down?
And again, that feels so harsh because it is one of those where you're like, it was an early horror, but I do think that's it. Like, you do watch early horror to see where it came from, but you appreciate that things will have improved, be it budgets, be it SFX. But I do think this did a lot really well, especially for its time.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm gonna go with 3.5. But amazing. That was our Hills Have Eyes episode, the 1977 version. Catch us again next week for a brand new episode. Until then, check us out on social, subscribe, love us. And even if you don't, subscribe anyway. Until then, bye.
Bye-bye. Don't die.